Well, I'd like to welcome you to our third session. I just want to share with you that a week from Thursday is going to be very exciting for me. A week from Thursday, I will be down at the Metropolitan Water District building opposite Union Station. It's a 13-story building. The Metropolitan Water District is the largest water district in the world. It serves over 19 million people. And I am going to address the entire structure of command of the organization in their auditorium, hundreds of people, for a whole hour. And that's quite a privilege. I'm not going to talk about aging or anything like that. But the title of my talk is Bird Species Variation at Lake Matthews over the last 58 years. Because in 1964, I began a study of the bird population of Lake Matthews when I was a graduate student. And I am still studying that population. And now my daughter, who was -4 when I started, is the scientific head because she has a PhD in wildlife biology. And so she is the head of our research. I do the observations, give her the data, and she crunches the data and publishes the report. And we do it every year, and the MWD loves it. And so it's going to be a very different kind of thing for me. Well, in our third session, we're continuing really with the topic of loss. We started out in the first session with the idea of the loss of our physical abilities and our strength, and what we can do about it. In the second session, we talked about our psychological losses that we face as we age. And now in this third session, we're going to talk about mental losses. And we'll go on in this series and find out there actually are 5 areas of loss that you deal with in aging. This session is really unusual and scary because first we have to begin to understand the enormity of the problem. It's just not a simple matter to say that, well, when you get old, you know, sometimes you get dementia and you lose your mind or something, and it's a problem of old people. The problem of dementia today is a huge problem affecting like the majority of our population. Anyone from age 30 on is at risk of dementia today. Dementia is on the rise. It's not getting smaller. You would think that with our better health practices, our better understanding of nutrition, our better medicine that we have today, that you would see that thing going down, but it doesn't. Well, what is dementia? It's a decline in mental function that is usually irreversible. Now, there's always some normal decline with age. We can expect that. And we're going to be talking about that today and what we can do. Now, it's a syndrome, and a syndrome is a syndrome is a constellation of symptoms that are thought to be associated with a disorder. And a disorder is a constellation of symptoms that have been proven to be associated with a disease. There are several disorders that can be lumped together in the area of dementia. And what are the earmarks of dementia? I've got 8 of them listed. There's chronic memory loss, disorientation, memory loss particularly, I would say, is something that you really think about as recent memory loss. People who have Alzheimer's disease often can remember things back when they were a child. So they didn't lose their memory, they only lost their recent memory. There's a big difference because the recent memory is your functional memory. You don't use your ancient memory to live, but you use your recent memory to live. And so that can affect the quality of life. Let me go up here where I can use the stand here. So memory loss is one of the first things that you'll note. If you have a friend or a spouse, someone that you know or someone who you love, who begins to ask you the same question over and over again in a few minutes' time, and then pretty soon she's asked it 12 times in an hour, like what time are we leaving or where are we going? You begin to suspect that there's something going on. Disorientation, not everyone wanders. You can be disoriented and stay at home. Some people who have dementia do set out the door and go on a hike, and that's a real problem. Confusion in space and time. They don't know where they are for sure. They may ask you, if it's your spouse, where are we now? And so you have to answer them just like you would a regular question. Disorganization. They can't organize anything. Language impairment affects some people who have dementia, not everyone. A lot of people remain very lucid, and it's not a problem at all. Mood and personality change usually hits, and it's usually for the worse. You can have sudden changes of mood, but you can also have personality changes where the person becomes more ornery, especially with males, it seems. It happens an awful lot. So much so that very often the male who otherwise could be living at home has to be institutionalized because his wife just can't handle him. But there are a smaller amount of people who have a personality change for the better, believe it or not. And they become really nice. Impaired reasoning. They just can't think things out. Now, I spent a number of years while I was pastoring as a hospice chaplain. I did both together. And I was a hospice chaplain starting in the 70s when hospice was not Medicare. It was just a local organization of volunteers. And those volunteers met the needs, but not the medical needs. So when the government stepped in, then I went right along with that and became a medical chaplain for several different hospices. And I would go out as part of my work to Alzheimer's institutions. And for 10 years, I covered Yucca Valley. And I was shocked to find out that in Yucca Valley, there are 3 Alzheimer's institutions. 3 in a small town like that, having hundreds of people who are in these rooms who have dementia or Alzheimer's. And my wife was an RN for hospice, and she specialized in dementia care as well. And we were just amazed by how many people have that condition, and no one knows about it, no one talks about it, not aware of it. And worldwide, it's the same issue, not just in the United States. Now, the diagnosis of dementia requires that at least 2 of these above areas must be in decline. So 2 of those 8 things have to be present in order for it to be called dementia. Did everyone get, anyone need the sheets? I've got more sheets here. Sean, can you pass, they're right up here in front. Pass them out, that would be great, because we do have the sheets for you to take home. To be called dementia, the disorder must be severe enough to interfere with daily life. That's the key. I mean, if you have, your spouse is just forgetful and can't remember things, it doesn't mean they have dementia. Not at all. But when that with one of the other things together comes along, and it begins to affect the quality of their life, the functioning of what they do during the day. Like they can no longer drive a car because they don't know where to go. And they require the use of the GPS just to get to church, even though they've been driving to the same church for 40 years. That is dementia. So Alzheimer's disease is a form of dementia. But not all people who have dementia have Alzheimer's, because there are other forms of dementia besides Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's was named after a German-Swiss doctor who around 1910 was studying mental loss, and he's the one who did the foundational work, and so they named the disease after him. Other forms of dementia are vascular dementia due to high blood pressure. High blood pressure is really bad. It can not only blow up your heart, but it can blow up your brain. Simple as that. And it goes untreated a lot of times because you don't feel it. And that's why it behooves us as we age to have our own blood pressure cuff that you can buy at the drugstore. Just put it around your wrist and push the button, and you can check your BP every day, or at least every week. Because you need to know if suddenly your BP goes high. And I've had low BP all of my life. But then when I got COVID for the first time in January of 2020, one of the lingering effects that lasted 9 months for me was I had really high blood pressure. And it was inexplicable and unknown. And they put me on some powerful medication to get that blood pressure down, because you don't want to have that happening. And now, of course, it's just fine. It's gone back to normal, and I don't have to have the medication anymore. Then there's alcohol-related dementia. If you came from a family of alcoholics like I did, you would know about that one. Alcohol just really rots out the brain, and people lose their ability to function. One aspect of Parkinson's disease, which is very common, is dementia. But not everyone who has Parkinson's has dementia. They estimate maybe 40%. They're not sure. 40% of Parkinson's people have dementia. Dementia can also be caused by drugs or chemicals. Young people sniffing glue and gasoline and things like that. That can have a terrible effect on them later in life. Page 2, how common is Alzheimer's disease in the U.S.? Well, it's estimated that 6.7 million people have Alzheimer's or dementia. 73% of these people are age 75 or older. So yes, dementia is a problem for older folks. But you see there's a pretty good grouping, almost a quarter of people, who actually can have dementia and not be older. And they can be in that 30 to 50-year-old age group. 1 in 10 people have either Alzheimer's or dementia at age 65, so that's 10%. 1 in 3 people have it at age 85. Wow. We are up against this implacable wall that what are we going to do? And so that's what today we'll look at some things that we can do at the end and take a leap of faith and see what we can do to try to protect our minds. A recent Columbia University study confirmed much of this, showing that almost 10% had dementia or Alzheimer's at 65, But they also showed that this is interesting, another 22% have mild cognitive impairment. Now, mild cognitive impairment is forgetfulness that is beyond what is expected from aging. We expect there's a certain amount of forgetfulness that comes with aging. And hey, folks, you don't have white hair unless you experience that. You forget this or that, and sometimes it's very important. And sometimes it's just forgotten and out of your mind, and sometimes you forget it, but then you remember it again. And that's normal aging. And I talked to my doctor about it once when I got worried years ago because I got in my car and I couldn't remember where I was going. And this was like 20 years ago. And he said, Craig, he said, if you're worried about having Alzheimer's, then you don't have it. He said, that's it. That's the test. I asked him, is there some test you can take? He said, yeah. Well, if you are worried that you've got it, then you've passed the test. You don't have it. But if you're not worried, then you might have it. Well, there is a global rise in dementia cases. How do we explain it? What's causing it? Is it just population growth? Is it just the fact that the world population is growing higher and higher, and the population in the U.S. is getting more and more, and the population of little old Yucca Valley is increasing, so now they have 3 full facilities filled with Alzheimer's patients? Or are there other factors that we don't know about? This is a big question. And right away, coming to my mind, I start thinking about just the food that we eat. You know, back in the 40s, when I was a kid, I used to be the one that had the job to stir the oleo, the white oleo, with the yellow dye, and so it would look like butter. That was it. And when my mother wanted to make a cake, she didn't go get a cake mix. She started from scratch in the 40s. And some of you probably are old enough that you did that too, you see. Our eating has changed so much. Our lifestyle has changed so much. We're exposed to so many more chemicals now than we were before. And these are all unknowns. What's the effect of some chemical 50, 60 years later? So there's no answer to the question at this point. We just don't know why dementia is increasing. We can only observe it and see that it's happening. Well, what does Alzheimer's disease in particular do to the brain? The brain becomes covered in an amyloid plaque. Amyloid is a protein that's naturally produced by the body. And this coating on the brain then short circuits the electrical impulses that go between different parts of the brain. And when those are short-circuited, then we lose our near memory, our recent memory. We have confusion. All of those things enter in, and eventually we have death, because those unplugging of electrical impulses can affect then body organs. And the average lifespan, I'm just talking about average now, from the first symptom in Alzheimer's to death is 8 years. But a friend of mine who was a practicing physician in this town, I used to ride bikes with him. He got it and he was dead in 2 years, just like gangbusters. And yet I know another person, I knew hospice patients who had gone 19 and 20 years. So it varies with the individual. We don't know exactly how long someone is going to live with Alzheimer's. Amyloid, let's see, look at 5C, amyloid patients. I see I blew that one away. It should be Alzheimer's patients. All have amyloid. Every patient who has Alzheimer's has amyloid in the brain, but not all who have amyloid get Alzheimer's disease. So try to figure that out. Just when we think we've had a breakthrough, we can explain exactly what Alzheimer's is, then you have this small cohort of people who can have the plaque and not have the disease. And how do you know if you have the plaque? Well, you have to be dead to find out because they do an autopsy of your brain. So that comes down to how Alzheimer's is diagnosed. It was always a differential diagnosis. Eliminate everything else, well, then it must be Alzheimer's. But now they can offer you a PET scan. They can offer absolute proof, just as good as the autopsy. And also a spinal tap can show the protein. The interesting thing is that no insurance company is going to pay for either of those because they just won't pay for that. And doctors won't offer those to you because spinal taps are, well, they're both, expensive and nobody wants to pay. And so doctors today are diagnosing on a differential basis just as they've always done. So if they have a patient who has 2 or more of these 8 symptoms, and it's interrupting the quality of their daily life, then they will just say, well, that's Alzheimer's. And so it becomes kind of a catch-all phrase. Number 7, the causes of Alzheimer's disease. Well, clearly the greatest risk factor is age. It is not whether it's in your family. Now, if it's in your family, does that mean you're going to have Alzheimer's disease? No. But what it does mean is that you have a greater chance of having Alzheimer's disease. But your chances are far greater that you won't have it. 71% of people who have Alzheimer's disease did not have any family with it at all. So that means only 29% had someone in their family who had it before them. But it's risky. And if you're in a family where you have one parent who died from it, and then you have siblings who've died from it, then your chances, of course, are greater. It all depends on a gene. Well, some people think genes are really important, because I have to qualify everything I say. There are 2 genes that are involved. The APOE E2 gene reduces risk. The APOE E4 gene increases risk. Now, if both of your parents carried a copy of the E4 gene, you are at real risk. If only one parent carried a copy of the E4 gene, you're at far less risk. And if both of your parents carried the E2 gene, you're not at risk at all from getting it genetically. But then scientists have also proven that Alzheimer's disease is not the result of just one gene. But there are several genes that have to be present. So we could say that an unlucky combination of genes can cause Alzheimer's. Also, how you live. Studies have shown you can reduce your chances by 35% through these 3 simple areas: eating nutritious food, getting enough sleep, and that's a big one. And I don't know about you, but I don't get enough sleep. I have a hard time. After 7 hours in bed, I can't stand it. I just have to get up. So I've been trying to sleep in a recliner after that. And then exercise. So those are the 3 areas. Through working in those 3 areas, you can reduce your chance by 35%. Then you have other factors that I was amazed to find out. Education. The more highly educated you are, it lessens your chance of Alzheimer's disease. Now, isn't that amazing? How does that work? And also race enters in. one scientist summarized by saying the causes probably include a combination of age-related changes in the brain, along with genetics, environmental, and lifestyle factors. So that's what causes Alzheimer's disease. It's a fancy way of saying we really don't know for sure. If we did, we could cure it. Well, other facts about Alzheimer's is that the majority of patients did not inherit the disease. So that's a relief for those who have a father or mother who had it. It's the 5th leading cause of death in the U.S. Women have the greatest risk. Twice as many women get Alzheimer's as men. And also, women are twice as likely to develop Alzheimer's disease compared to developing breast cancer. 10% of breast cancer patients are male. So women, of course, are the ones at risk. And then African Americans are twice as likely to get Alzheimer's disease in America as white people in America. And Hispanic people in America are 1.5 times more likely to develop Alzheimer's disease. So how does that work? Is that a matter of socioeconomics, that poorer people are more apt to get it than richer people? Or is this something in the genes? Is this a biological fact? It's all unknown. So if you're only 20 today and you would like to have a great life, go to medical school and become a researcher in Alzheimer's disease. It's really needed. So more than 11 million American caregivers in 2018. 11 million people. And of course, a lot of them are spouses. You know, when you sign on till death do us part, that's the fulfillment of the marriage vows, when you take care of your spouse, right? You know, to the end. And that's an awful lot of people taking care of somebody. In 2022, these caregivers provided more than 18 billion hours of care. Almost 2/3 of caregivers are women. So women really get the short end of things with Alzheimer's disease. They get it twice as often, and 2/3 of women are caregivers. 30% of these women caregivers are age 65 or older. And 41% of them have an income of less than $50,000. So that's really a difficult thing. It just shows you the problems that exist in our society, depending on, whether you were born a male or a female, or whether you were born white or black or brown, whether you get a great education or don't. And all of them are, the experts can't explain those things. But that's what we're up against. So what are we going to do? Well, I saw on TV, there's some pills. If I take this pill, this lady's sitting there telling me how much sharper she got after taking this pill. And then a man comes on and says, I've got, and it shows pictures of him golfing, and how he takes the pill and has a happy life, because now he remembers everything. And there's several different brands of pills. One of them, they just advertise, they spend millions of dollars advertising. But if you Google it and read about it, go to WebMD and some of these other medical sites, you'll find out that it ain't so, Ma. That just isn't the way it works. Those claims are unsubstantiated. So unfortunately, in our pill-taking society, we can't take a pill to help us with our memory. And besides, if I bought a bottle of those pills, I wouldn't remember where I put it anyway. So what are we going to do? Well, there's a program on internet, I've been looking for years at these because of my work in Alzheimer's. I've been Googling these kinds of programs and trying them out. Could any of my patients get better if they used some program to help your memory, to strengthen your memory? And the one program that stands out head and shoulders above them all is Lumosity. But I need to tell you the other side. Lumosity, well, it started being marketed in 2010, became a multi-million-dollar business, $165 million profits in 1 year. And the FDA stepped in and investigated. They fined them, and they had to pay $19 million fine. It was down from $100 million. They negotiated it down. Lumosity had to pay the government $19 million for false advertising because what they were claiming they couldn't substantiate. And furthermore, the FDA declared it to be a fraud. Well, they paid the money, and they got a new management. And since these last 5 years, they have really gone after the science. And you can go to their site and see what they're doing. They're really working on it. And I have to applaud them for that. And if they're charlatans, I don't know why they would be doing that. So I've tried the program, and there's just something about it that really, really helps me. I just can't believe that this program is a fraud. It really works. It will make your brain work in ways that you haven't had it work in years. And you get just, your head gets tired after you go through some of their exercises that you can do every day. And not only that, yes, it costs, but it's like $65 a year if you want to join, and you can also do it without joining and have a limited entree into their testing. But for the full testing, you want to pay $65 a year, unlimited use, and you can do it every day for a year and see what you think. Now, I was hoping that I could get some of you to try it. Did anybody try it? Oh, look at that. Now we're talking. Good, because I'm not trying to sell you anything, and I don't get a cut. I don't work for Lumosity. I just found something that, for me, I think it's got a future. It's got a hope. So I want to know if someone would like to share what they thought of it.
Okay. I haven't joined the program. I just started it last week, and I was doing the testing, and I found that to be very intriguing to do that. But I haven't taken the next step and paid for the training. But yeah, it was kind of fun to do and certainly challenging.
Yeah. Did you feel your brain straining there, trying to get those things in?
Well, yeah, because we're not often tested in that way in our ordinary life. And
Exactly.
So it's nice to be challenged, because we know in any aspect, whether it's mental or physical, you grow by being challenged. And
Right.
so we need that kind of thing to help us.
Right. All right, someone else who tried it. And if it didn't work for you, tell us. Let us know.
Well, I was determined to give it a try, and I tried it, and I honestly, at some points, I was supposed to put the dot or do this or do that, and I got like, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to do this for a half an hour, and pretty soon my hand was just pressing the space bar, and it wasn't supposed to be. There are a lot of different tests that you can do, and I have scores, but they're probably...
Oh, you don't have to share them.
I'm not going to tell you how much.
I won't share my
I
scores
don't want to
either.
be
It's a secret.
embarrassed myself.
Yeah,
But can I explain some of the different
Sure.
tests?
sure.
Like word bubbles, then explain that you have a couple of letters and what you're supposed to do to put in a lot of different words, and you're moving animals back to their houses, and you're trying to do other things fast, and math and different things like that, pet detective, and oh my gracious, it's pretty intense, but they keep saying, well, do you want to take the next one? And I think, well, not right now. It was very intriguing.
It's very intense.
It really was.
Yeah.
You don't want to say?
Anyone else like to share about their lumosity experience? Now, lumosity is doing research, trying to substantiate, and all that is substantiated so far with a test of 4,600 people is that there are short-term benefits from it. What we need are long-term benefits from it. And unless, of course, they can demonstrate that, it's not going to help us. But I see it as the only hope on the horizon. The only thing. Yes?
Eli Lilly's come out with a drug recently for it.
Oh, Eli Lilly has?
Yes, I just read about it. So let's hope it works.
Drug companies worked for years on it, and
Yeah, they have. Eli Lilly has for years. They've worked on it. And they've come out with a drug, and they can't guarantee it's going to work, but they have something now going.
just 2 months ago, there was the announcement that the majority of drug companies are stopping all the research on the topic because they just feel they've gotten nowhere in all these years. So that's good news that Eli Lilly has come out with something, because no one else is working on it now. It's just a morass.
My mom died from Alzheimer's about a little over 2 years ago. And during that time, there was some word that something was being developed, but it was too late to be of any good to her. So I don't know I lost track of what came of it since that time. But
Well, the only drugs that they've got now is that they do have some drugs that give you temporary relief that help stabilize, actually. But that's as far as it goes. So what we're looking for is a drug that is going to reverse Alzheimer's or stop it from happening. That would be marvelous. But since we don't know what causes Alzheimer's, it's hard to come up with some drug like that. It just, I mean, like remember when microwaves came out back in the 50s or early 60s? Oh my, I was highly suspicious of eating microwave food. I thought, my ear is changing. Are you changing this food? And then you're going to eat it?
Don't stand in front of them.
Yeah, you still today, you don't get your face up next to it. It's not a good idea to microwave your brain. But all I eat now is microwave food, and I've gotten over it. So, but we don't know about things, and especially new things, and we don't know the effect of what we're doing to ourselves, what we're eating. And how about the dye in all of these foods? Green dye, red dye, blue dye. No one knows what happens to those after 50 years in your body. That's the problem. When our bodies get old enough, we collect all these poisons, or something's going on that our minds start going, that, our chance of, by the time reaching 85, a third of us will have dementia. That's pretty enormous. Anyone else want to talk about anything? Share experiences. Yeah.
I just have a little question. Have they come up with anything that helps in eliminating the amyloid plaque?
No. That's the question is, have they come up with anything that helps to eliminate amyloid plaque? Oh boy, get an amyloid scrubber that would dissolve the plaque in the brain. That's and it isn't because they didn't try. These pharmaceutical companies all realized that if they could be the one to invent that, they would make billions of dollars. So they've tried and tried and tried. Nothing has come from it. Any other questions?
I know there's one in the back, so I'm going to run back there real quick.
Here, why don't you try?
No, I'm okay.
Well, I have two comments. One, that the drug that was just released this week, it was a big news item, slows the formation of amyloid plaque, but doesn't reverse it or prevent it.
Was that from Eli Lilly?
I don't remember which drug company, but it was in the New York Times this week.
Oh.
And there was some controversy about it. But the other thing is that my doctor said that many doctors are beginning to refer to dementia as type 3 diabetes because they've discovered a strong relationship between eating sugar and dementia.
Yeah, don't want to embarrass us, but I wish I could have the freedom to have us raise our hand if we are affected by diabetes, because the truth is that if you're over 50, you probably are affected by diabetes from one way or another. I mean, I have low diabetes, but it's still I'm still classified as a diabetes patient. In spite of a lifetime of athleticism and eating properly, I was a vegetarian for 30 years, still developed it. So that has to do with aging. And is sugar really a poison? We don't know. But I love chocolate chip cookies.
We are taking so many medicines, and there is a combination of medicine what we are taking. We don't know interaction. So does this interaction has effect on Alzheimer or dementia?
Oh, yes. Maybe it's sugar that interacts with something else that causes this. I don't know. I would say at the rate we're going, we're 100 years out from solving this puzzle. So just add 100 years to your age and it'll be solved. So I'll be 183. Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to share about the brain, and we are talking about food, but it's not only the food, the hair products that go straight into the, through the root cell to the brain directly. The shampoos, the dyes, and hair dyes, and the chemicals that are put in the salon is
Yes, you smell that stuff in a salon. Some of it smells noxious.
Yeah, that's more dangerous even than the food we eat.
Yeah. Or how about dust that we inhale? I mean, I know a man who died from inhaling dust. It went into his brain and started a fungus and killed him. It's called valley fever.
Oh, yeah.
And
I have a question. So you said that this is a growing problem, but is it that the rate is increasing or the numbers? I mean, because, a few decades ago we had 6 billion people in the world, and we've now got, 8 or 9, but is the rate remain constant, or is the rate of incidence
That's what we don't know.
We don't know?
I raised that question. Is it just population increase? Is that why we have more people, so we have more disease? Is that all? Maybe so.
We expect more from aged people now?
That we expect more, them to do more, or?
Yeah, to be more up with the times.
Like when we were children, we didn't expect too much from Grandma. If Grandma was sitting in the rocking chair and we used to go in and sing to her or talk to her, she wasn't expected to know how to work the phonograph or how to do something else. And in today's world, I'm expected to know how to do a computer.
I know.
Work some other things. I keep active with crossword puzzles. I do word puzzles like 5 each morning. But, you think, how much am I supposed to be doing anyway at 85?
It's an open question. It's a really good question. Yes.
I think it's all tied to the chemicals and what we've got in our air, the air we breathe, what's in our soil, the meat, the hormones that go to make those big chicken breasts, the cows, the fertilizers, the chemicals. We want to have that perfect looking tomato. it looks perfect. It doesn't taste like they used to, but I think all of the chemicals and if we pollute the water, the air, and the soil, and the insecticides, and maybe that's also correlated to the rise in autism.
Good question. And that's also a brain problem. Is it turn on for children at age 2, 3, 4, 5, and so they become autistic. Yeah, I saw it myself. And then in Germany, France, they don't allow GMO foods there, genetically modified foods, only in America. But then when you look at their rates for Alzheimer's, it doesn't seem to be any different per capita. But maybe it's more than that. Maybe it's that with something else, or as we say, combining this with that, or I don't know. I don't know what to do about it. It's a huge problem. It's a far bigger worry than our health. Because, I mean, for years I heard this saying, well, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. But the truth is, if you don't have your brain, if you don't have your mental health, your physical health doesn't matter because you won't know about it. I mean, it's just, it's an enormous problem to look at for older people. It really is. But I just think that crossword puzzles, anything that gets your mind working, games, and then as one person mentioned to me, Steve, our organist, they have studies now with music and how music helps. And I know that as a chaplain, I would sit down visit with a catatonic Alzheimer's patient in an institution. And then when I sang Amazing Grace, it was like turning on their on button. They suddenly came back to earth. And they were alert and talking and singing with me. So music is a big help too.
May I mention one other thing, research-based? One of the things I know in smaller countries, like in the Netherlands, they've started pairing university students with people that are in homes. So they have people roughly in their 19s to mid-20s paired with people 70 upwards. I don't know that it's created a decrease in Alzheimer's, but there's something about relational habits and connection that seems to slow things as well. So I know that's one of the challenge points that I've heard from a lot of people is how do I remain connected with people, family and friends and that sort of thing. But it seems like that's a critical piece of this is relationship and connection serving us in a positive way. And it was also passing down memories as well, which I think is pretty important.
Yeah, I read about that. It sounds very interesting. When I was in my early 30s, late 20s, I taught for a while, taught school, and I ended up running a remedial math lab in a junior high. And I needed help, and I knew there was a whole segment of population who needed something to do. And I went out to senior clubs and places, and I started a program of getting seniors in to volunteer to tutor these kids in the math lab. And pretty soon I had 40 seniors signed up who came in once a week and helped these kids. And their oldest volunteer was 96, and he still drove. And you wouldn't believe the wonderful results of this program. The kids benefited, the seniors benefited, and we'll be talking about that on our session on volunteerism in June. To see what we can do to help ourselves out. But I think those activities, using the mind, that's what we need to aim for. That's the only hope we have, is to go ahead and use our mind, be active, get engaged, read books, and maybe Lumosity has some hope. Those are the kinds of things that we need to be doing. That's the only suggestion that I know. We had a question in the back.
Not a question, but just a comment. I've read in certain science journals, well, more like magazines, that the brain is still plastic even up through older age. And as long as you're doing these types of things, like with luminosity, and you're keeping your brain active, doing crossword puzzles, doing things that are challenging your brain makes new connections to different parts, and that can circumvent illnesses in your brain. So your brain has plasticity all through your entire life. So it's really important to make those new connections, and constantly doing that can stave off illnesses, just from having those new connections that you make all the time.
Good.
I just have a quick question. We missed like the first part of it, and I was looking at the first page where it says vascular dementia due to high BP. What's BP?
Oh, blood pressure. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm so used to it. Yeah, blood pressure. Yeah, high blood pressure blows up your heart so that your ejection fraction gets less and less until you can no longer live. And that, in other words, it just gets weaker. And it also blows up your brain so that you can lose your mind. So high blood pressure is an insidious killer that you can have and not even know it. So that's why I say go down to Thrifty and buy yourself this little blood pressure cuff and take your BP. Stay on top of it. Don't let it get away from you. Next time, yes. Where's your next session? Next time, I believe it's depression. And depression, again, is one of our losses. It's the loss of happiness, and it affects many, many older people, and that can be a killer as well. Is that right? Yeah, depression. Yeah, so it's tied together with loneliness. Even if you're married, you can still be lonely. And of course, many of us older people are living alone now, so you're going to be lonely. My mother always said, she lived alone for the last 40 years of her life. She always said, well, I have my dog and he's somebody. And that was true for her. It's next June, it's June 18th. I've been real proud of myself. I've been able to keep these dates with my schedule, which is always changing. And we're good for June 18th. On depression. Don't get depressed thinking about it. All right, fine. Thank you. Oh, yes.
They are, yes. If you go to it's on YouTube, First Congregational Church on YouTube, and you'll see we have little snapshots. Says saving your mind, so dealing with aging, saving your mind. So each session, except for the very first one, we did not record that one. But all the previous ones that we've had so far, yeah.
We have handouts from the first sessions, and next time we could probably put up a display of the handouts.
We can put up a display, or if you want to if you use email, I'm more than happy to email that to you as well.
Yeah, we have handouts from everything, and I have them on my computer too. So I'm writing this seminar as I go. I've never presented it before, and I am planning, after this is all over, I'm planning to go on the road with it and be offering this to other churches, because I think that we're onto something here that really is essential. We have so many older people now in the churches, and we kind of ignore them in a lot of ways. We don't provide them with the kinds of things that they need to solve their problems. And so that's what I'm hoping to do, because I am one. See, once I was young, and now I turned out to be an old grandma. Well, a grandpa. And when I married my wife, she wasn't an old lady, and I wasn't an old man. And when I met my wife, she was only 19, and I was 21. And we didn't have any pain. I mean, it was wonderful. And so you grow old. That's the design. You grow old together, and we walk together through all of this. And then when one of us gets Alzheimer's, the other one will take care. And that's the way. Well, I used to, when I worked at hospice, my desk was in the room with nurses. I used to tell them, well, I sleep with a nurse every night.